Hi, everyone. I'm guessing you can hear me all over the world at the moment. Welcome from Berlin, where I am today. It's a great privilege to share this time with you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world. Like I say, it's a real privilege to be with you. I started working in international education in 2000 exactly, and there were 1 million pupils in international schools. Now, 18 years later, there are, I think, around 5 million students in international schools around the world. And I think in that 18-year period, not only are there 4 million more students in schools, but I think the nature of parenting has changed as well. And that's what we're going to look at today in this half hour. I really, really hope you're going to find something that you can take away useful for you, that you can discuss with your faculty. It's going to be something of use that you're going to get today. Obviously, this is going to last about 33 minutes. We're only going to be scratching the surface of some of the issues, but I hope this is a stimulus to something that you think, yeah, this is something that might be of use to us. So a little bit about my company. My company is School Leaders Training. We specialize in middle leadership training and basically anything we believe that there's a huge amount of untapped potential within middle leaders in schools. And one of the things we do is deal with parents and training for dealing with parents. So that's the welcome. A teacher asked me not that long ago, have you ever felt like screaming at parents? I said to her, you know, if you change that question to have you ever not felt like screaming at parents, then I could probably answer it truthfully and say no. But she's not the only one. Wherever I go, increasingly principals, teachers are getting stressed, they're getting frustrated at some of the actions of parents. And this is really why we're doing this webinar today, to look at these. So some of the issues that we are going to look at. So we've got issues regarding international parents, particularly in international schools. We're going to look at why parents affect us as teachers, as principals, as counsellors, and importantly, what can we do about it? It's one thing to say that, you know, there are issues, but, you know, like, what can we do? There's always something you can do with issues in schools. Although one of the things I've found is sometimes schools are not really dealing with these issues. They're just pretending that they're going on regardless. So the first question, what is your job? I don't mean what is your job title. I mean what is your job? If you're running a school, what is the job? To me, and this is kind of my belief, is that if you're the director or a principal of a school, your job is to remove barriers so that teachers can get on with the thing that is going to make the difference to the students, which is the teaching and learning. If you can remove the barriers, and then that is a big part of your job to that, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. However, having said all that, you know, we are on the same side, or we should be. You know, parents are want the same for our children. That, you know, that picture there was done by one of my children, and so the whole point of this webinar is it's coming from a point of respect. It's not a point of an adversarial position. It's definitely a point of respect. We should be saying the same things to parents, and we're going to be looking in the next half hour as to how we can be doing that, what we can learn from each other, and how we can get that so they're all a little bit less stressed and a bit more productive. Yeah, issues with parents can be time consuming. We know that, but they can be a way into more significant matters. We know as principals, as teachers, that sometimes the first meeting, you know, we don't say, or parents don't say what the real issues are. It takes more than one meeting. And sometimes, you know, if we can have that mindset that actually we can learn something from the issue, you know, over time you build up the relationships with parents, which can be very useful, not just for their own student, but often other students in the staff in the school as well. And that's an important thing. I think things are changing without a doubt in the last 20 years, in the last 10 years, even the 5 years. the situation is changing. Most people will agree with that. We've now got these two terms, helicopter and lawnmower parents. Helicopter parents are the parents who hover over their child. It seems like it's 24 hours a day. And any time there's a problem, they swoop down to solve the issue so that their child doesn't have to face the problem. Whereas lawnmower parents are the ones who go ahead of the child, smoothing the grass, smoothing the ground so that their child has a nice, smooth path to go through. And you know, you'll have heard now that university tutors are reporting that they're getting phone calls from parents. It would have been unheard of 20 years ago. And this issue, you know, the problem with this is, as we all know, that these situations can be counterproductive. Things like self-esteem in children, these are built up not by having a smooth path, but self-esteem is built up by being faced with a problem, being given the right guidance, the right scaffolding, and overcoming a problem yourself. That's what builds self-esteem. So some of these, you know, and again, parents are sometimes doing the wrong thing, but for the right reason. So international school, we've got lots of different issues on top of all the other issues connected to parenting in the 21st century. You know, however many different nationalities there are in your school, you might have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. You know, of course, the issue is every parent went to school, therefore they could be an expert, considered to be an expert on education because they've done it. And if it worked for them, then why doesn't it work that way in your school? But of course, education is very, very different around the world, and you've got those issues to contend with. You also might have the issue of first-time buyers. International schools are in effect independent schools. They're fee-paying schools, and often the first generation of parents or families to go into independent education, it can be a struggle. It might be that parents have been used to buying everything they want. If they want a new car, they go off to the garage and they get a new 7 Series BMW. Education is different. It's a long race. It's a long, and what you're not selling is a place at Harvard or Oxford. You're selling something different, and that can be managing the expectations of parents can be tricky. Something that came up on one of the webinar pre-questions was about staff and their own children. Obviously, there tend to be a lot of staff, faculty, children within international schools. And of course, this can be a great thing, but it can also be a challenge. It can be a challenge in that, you know, there can be accusations of favoritism and all sorts of things. And we're going to look at a little bit about how we can cope with that. Language, the same words don't always mean the same thing. I have very good friends whose partners, wives, husbands are not English, but they're fluent in English. But I know that when they say things, the words might be exactly 100% right, but the way they're perceived is very, very different. And that can be really hurtful. I know people who've been married 10 years and still struggle with it. And these are things that we're coming up with all the time in international schools. We might have people who are talking to us very, very articulately in English, but just some expressions don't translate, or some expressions can come across in quite a different way, and we need to be aware of that. There's also different perceptions of education. You know, what is education for? Is it, you know, some people might think, it's just simply an exam factory. We need to get the grades so that we can go to the best universities. Is education for providing the next generation of selfish bankers and programmers and coders, or is there a big picture to education where we're looking at the arts and developing the whole holistic person who can contribute to society? People have different views, and within international education, they might be more diverse than in other schools. We're going to start by looking at a survey which you might have seen done earlier this year by the Varkey Foundation. A global parents survey, and there's a website if you want to look at it yourself. It was a comprehensive survey. I'm just going to share with you one or two little things from it. The first thing I'm going to share is something on what causes parents' anxiety at school. You know, if we can get a little bit of grips to that, we can have a think. Well, what are the issues? And you might be able to see that if you've got good eyesight. These are the countries, sorry, that are part of the survey. And these were some of the issues. Different countries had different worries. The parents from different countries were thinking about different anxieties. If we look at the US, they have the highest percentage of parents who were worried about their children growing up too early, closely followed by the UK, 35 and 34%. Other countries, that wasn't so much an issue. In Japan, only 11% of the parents there were worried about that issue. And this is interesting. You'd probably expect this, but this is what the research bore out. Then, you go on to issues like homework. Time spent helping children with homework varies massively around the world. If you look at those figures there, this is in an average week, parents in India will help their children 12 hours, and in Japan, just 2.6. The US is more or less at the global average of around 6 hours, UK a bit less. But again, very, very interesting reading. This is similar to that in that not just the average time, but the bars on the right-hand side there, if you can see those, the bars in red, these are showing what the parents who spend no time helping their children on academic studies in a week. And what's interesting, Germany, where I am today, and Japan come out the highest for that. 36% of the parents in the survey from Germany spent no time helping their children with academic work at all. 45% of the Japanese parents. So, we've got this diverse group. So, they've got very, very different expectations of what homework is about, what school is about. We've got to face these challenges. So how do you deal with this diversity? And there's an irony here. We've got these wonderful opportunities of schools full of international children. 40 years ago, that we wouldn't have dreamt that this was possible. And we've got we should have, international schools should be havens of plurality, diversity, openness, innovation, creativity. However, the opposite can happen. We can be fearful of change, and sometimes the safe or existing path is often chosen because we're afraid of upsetting a particular group of parents. So we're afraid of doing the right thing because some people might object, and that's a shame, and it's not it's not right. So we're going to look at why do parents upset us. We're not going to spend so much time, apart from what we have done, as why they act like they do. Faculty rooms are full of teachers giving their opinions on why parents act like they do, which is not always helpful. But why do they upset us? I think this is important before we go on to the point of what we can do about it. So these are some of the ideas. Maybe professional pride. We've had lots of training. We've had tens, hundreds, thousands of hours of training to be a teacher, to be a principal. You get no training whatsoever to be a parent. There's the pride. Questioning authority. At one time, parents didn't question the authority of teachers. And, if we've still got that mindset, some teachers still don't like it. We might feel undermined, that they're questioning what we do. We might think, a parent who's got one child, they're naturally only seeing one child's one perspective, one side of the argument. There's always two sides to every argument, two sides to every coin, and yet they are taking what can be considered perhaps a biased view of the situation. Maybe invasive. You might feel that you're getting emails 24 hours a day. It was funny. I was doing some training in Southeast Asia recently. And we were talking about the wisdom of not having access to electronic devices in your bedroom, particularly ones for email. And everyone was nodding, everyone saying, yeah, it makes sense not to look at your school emails when you've got to bed. All schools have policies about how quickly you should answer your emails. But I don't know of any school that has a policy that says if you get an email at 11 o'clock at night, you have to answer it before midnight. And all the delegates in this room were nodding their head saying, yeah. And then one of them said, yeah, but I'm just curious what they're saying. And yeah, you might be curious, but I don't think it's doing any good looking at emails that time of day. Sometimes you hear this by teachers, you know, they can't even look after one child properly, and then they're lecturing us about how to look after a whole class full or a whole school full of 1,000. Other things might be, you know, as a principal, this happens a lot. You can't reveal the big picture sometimes. You can't reveal, you know, human relations issues, issues with faculty that are sensitive, maybe child protection issues. And you're not lying to parents, but you can only give them, by your job, you can only give them a partial bit of the picture. And if only they realised. Ingratitude. Sometimes staff think, you know, they do all these hours, they take work home, they work at weekends, they organise residential trips, they look after children virtually 24 hours a day. And there's never any gratitude. But you know what? In a way, that's life. You never get the gratitude you deserve, but it cannot upset faculty. Sometimes faculty, just teachers and principals, just think parents are being unreasonable. You know, they are not looking at a situation rationally, and that can be hard. Sometimes we think it's just frustrating. You know, we can't say what we really think. We want, you know, afterwards, after a meeting, oh, why didn't I say that? Or I should have been more truthful or whatever. And it's frustrating. Some people are great at dealing with parents, but, you know, it can be frustrating. However, given all these reasons why we might feel upset by the actions of parents, for me, the biggest one is this, that we might get the perception that they hinder progress. If you haven't read this book by Amabile and Kramer from the Harvard Business School, The Progress Principle, it talks about motivation, how progress is the best motivator. You know, not dissimilar to what Jim Collins said about great leaders not to worry about extrinsic ways of motivating staff, because momentum takes care of that. And this is a similar thing. And if we have a mindset of this time-consuming meeting with a parent, or this issue that is dragging on is eating my time so that I can't make the progress with the pupils, I can't spend my limited time on stuff that's going to really make a difference with the pupils, then it can be frustrating, and this can be demotivating. However, I would argue we could switch the mindset so when we have an issue, you know, how can parents help us make progress, rather than the fact that this 1 hour meeting is stopping me doing what I could be doing, which is going to make the school a better place. And there's always things we can learn. We can always, you know, whenever a parent comes to us, even perhaps what you might consider the most craziest, unreasonable parent, there's always something in there that you can take. It's free feedback about your school. And there's always something that you can learn from the situation, which will benefit maybe not their own pupil and maybe others as well. So what can we do? You know, when I was first head, I went on a conference, and the person organising it was all new head teachers in the UK, and the person organising the conference said, you know, have an honest think about yourself. What part of the job, as you're a new head of a school, what part of the job are you shying away from? What part of the job gives you a bit of angst, and you know you kind of want to ignore it, you want to pretend it's not there. And for me, as parents, dealing with parents, but what the gentleman said on the course was, you know what, make yourself a world expert at that area, whatever it is. And that was good advice. So rather than trying to bury the issue, bury the problems, get yourself good at it. I never became the world expert on it, but I tried. And I became much better, and I became much less stressed by the issues. And the other thing, of course, with this issue, parents are not discussed, in my experience, a lot in schools, apart from perhaps, like I say, in faculty rooms, which is unhelpful in a negative way, in terms of dealing with parents in a positive way to reduce stress and increase job satisfaction, which ultimately benefits the students. So we can always do that. And the sign of any good organisation is not to ignore something when there's an issue. We might choose to do nothing, but that's different from ignoring it. So a few practical things. You know, what image does your school give? You know, in some cities now, the competition for international schools is is crazy. There's a lot of schools opening, a lot of big name schools going, and there's a lot of things going on. But it's important that you are selling your school as to what it is. Otherwise, at some point, parents are going to come and say, you know, you've missold the product. So, you know, the image that you give on glossy websites and all the way through needs to be what it actually is. And the school ethos needs to come through that. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he mentors new head teachers in the UK. And he was saying he had a telephone conversation last week with a new head teacher, and he was talking about issues, how he can give guidance and support. And she was saying, oh yeah, I have to write a new school ethos policy. And he said to her, oh, that's great, what a lovely job. You know, that could take, you know, a year or two, you get everyone involved, and, you know, it's a lovely project. And she said, oh, no. I have to do it by tomorrow. Now, how can you write an ethos policy overnight? You know, the ethos, the culture of your school is everything. And international schools, that's really important that we do that. So induction of staff, you know, you'll all have good induction programs, but are they long enough? Where do your staff come from? Not in terms of geographical, but from schools. If they come from national schools or private schools, it could be quite different. In some national schools, the experience of parents is very, very different still. And it might be a shock for some staff, for some faculty to do that. And that can be addressed in induction programs. Again, the ethos and the school culture, a lot of good induction programs. You know, yeah, you get used to the city you're in, you get used to the school, whatever. But a lot of induction programs are too short. A good induction program should be over the year, not just the first few weeks or the first month. And things like ethos and school culture, if you spend time embedding that with staff, then they'll be better able to answer queries of parents. They'll be able to act in a way that mirrors your school culture, which will give less opportunity for disagreement. Again, induction of staff. There's a lot in some schools, a lot of children, of faculty within the school. You know, has that been addressed at the induction? It should be. It brings particular challenges. There's opportunities. Certainly, the children should never be disadvantaged because their parents are working at the school. However, you know, you need to draw up a code of conduct as to what is acceptable, what boundaries are there, and what are the ways of doing things. And again, it's always much easier to do these things at the beginning than wait until a problem arises halfway through a contract and then try and look at it then. Induction of parents, and that starts with your admission staff. Admission staff sometimes, if your school is oversubscribed, can be in a very stressful situation. But do the admission staff know not just about the curriculum and exam questions and universities that your graduates go to, but do they know about the school ethos? Do they know about the systems? Do they know about how things are done around here? Because if they do, again, they'll be able to, you know, it's not about selling places to anyone, but it's about matching parents to what you're doing in your good schools. Front of house staff, similarly, you know, training for them can be, it's more than just good customer service skills. It's about, you know, them knowing what your school is about. And just rather than just relying on picking that up slowly over time. Introductory meetings with parents, they are worth the weight in gold. If you have a very high turnover of students in your school, you might be needing these every month through the year, not just in August. But these are useful, even if you have 2 or 3 parents at them or whatever. You can set out what the school is about, how you deal with issues, what you're trying to do, and that face-to-face. Things are always better face-to-face than electronically. Handbooks, you know, staff handbook. Have you got parents handbook? Have you got one? What it's about, and dealing with issues as much as possible in detail. Ongoing workshops. Get parents close to you, and again, so that big issues don't happen. The more you see parents, the more you can address small issues before they grow into big ones. There was also questions about parents as board members, which can be tricky. But again, this goes down to the induction of the parents in these situations. You know, there should be very, very clear boundaries, very clear borderlines. What is going on? What is the role of you if you are volunteering as a parent on a board? And again, if that is done at the beginning, that is much better. You might get in your school parents with time to volunteer. It happens. People have moved to a different country. They want to help the school. But as a principal, this can be tricky because volunteers, you feel like you haven't got the same control over them. They don't have a contract. And this can be upsetting, there isn't the same control as you do over your faculty. My advice to this would be to get the parents in, involve them in a project that you wouldn't necessarily be doing otherwise. In independent schools and fee-paying schools in America, there's a lot of talk about the gap, the difference between what fees pay for and what, in an ideal situation, the school can provide. And sometimes parent-teachers associations supply that missing gap. You have to be careful because you'll also have it in your international schools, parents who are very, very busy, working all the hours, and you don't want to feel they're missing out just because they're working all the time. So my advice is to use the parents on some kind of project that wouldn't be done otherwise, but still benefits the students at the school. I have a good friend of mine who is a director of a huge multinational company, and every time I see him, I always ask him about what kind of training they've been having as directors of the company. And a few years ago, he said to me, all the training this year is all about strategy. All about strategy, how if we get the long-term picture right, that will sort out all our problems. And then the next year I said, what are you having this year? And I said, this year it's all about putting out fires because we had all these fires we didn't know how to put out last year. I said, okay. And then the year after there was a balance of both. Of course, planning to avoid fires is great. You want to put systems, you want to put things in place so that situations don't boil over. However, some fires are inevitable, and and I know principals who have unreasonable targets of 0% parental complaints. That is unreasonable because something can always happen beyond your control, and the only thing that a target of 0% is going to give you is an ulcer, and you're making a bod for your own back. What else can you do? Don't spend too much time in the office. If you're out and about, you see how the school is. You've all probably done this, but maybe not for a while, and maybe not in the school you're at. Follow a student for the day. If you do that, if you follow a student for the day, you will see your school in a different light. You'll see the little things that you've not picked up on before, and you'll be able to put things in place, again, to avoid parental issues. Take a colleague's lesson for a day. If you're passionate about a subject, do that. It's a great way of getting credibility among the faculty, and you'll see the school in a different light. It's great to be visible. All good school leaders spend time out and around different aspects of the school in the morning, afternoon, all over the place. But be careful because there's always a temptation when a parent comes to you with an issue, and you get your magic wand out and solve it for them straight away, which you've got the power and legitimacy to do that. However, just be careful because if you skip some faculty in the chain of command, they're not going to like that, and it kind of undermines them. So you're always better off pointing the parents in the direction of the right member of staff who can solve the problem rather than automatically doing it yourself. And again, regardless of what you do, some people will always accuse you of favouring some. This is a quotation from over 500 years ago from a French philosopher, and it's very true. Sometimes as counsellors, principals, we worry about parents, we worry about what's going to happen, but in fact most things don't happen. My life has been filled with terrible misfortune, most of which never happened, and that it can certainly be the case. So what else can we do to preempt issues with parents? Start the school year well. We know this. We know that if you get, as a new teacher, if you start the year well with a group of parents, it's money in the bank. It can go well. If the first time a parent comes to meet a teacher, there's some of the child's work is on the wall with their name on, and this can, the child can be any age between 3 and 18. It makes a good impression. If you can tell something about the child that they couldn't do a week before, again, it's going to start the school well. Make sure school policies and procedures are known by everyone, not just dusty policies that mean nothing. Make sure they're known and adhered to and understood. You've got a challenge with international schools. The turnover of staff can be high, but it's also an opportunity. Induction, retention is crucial in international schools. Endless communication, but effective communication. You can over communicate. There's Twitter. There's all sorts of things that the schools are doing, but make sure you do communicate things. And if there's bad news, make sure the parents hear it from you first. Parent-teacher meetings. Again, have you given your staff training on parent-teacher meetings? How to be effective in those, and again, getting the school ethos across. Again, and this is something that my company does a lot, giving confidence to middle leaders, whether it's people in charge of a subject, a grade level, a section, whatever it is. It's a time saver as a principal, because if your middle leaders are dealing with issues, there's going to be less parents come to you, and again, it gives them the skills, the confidence to deal with these issues. Practice in low-stakes situations. Yeah, you can practice. I don't see this going on in a lot of schools, but if you've got a big meeting with a parent coming up, have you practiced beforehand? You might have made a few notes. Sometimes you haven't even done that. But, you can practice in a situation and encourage people. Role play, some people love it, some people hate it, but it can be useful. You can look at situations involving parents. Something that my company does, we use a lot of video. We don't have actors, I have a bank of videos that are made by teachers around the world, and they explain situations that they've had to deal with regarding parents, and we use those in our training sessions so that, again, people can get used to actual real-life situations and pick up the experience to deal with situations. When to listen, when to act. I had an interesting experience quite a few years ago now. I had a high-stakes meeting coming up. There was me and a colleague, parents, and it was going to be a big meeting. I was concentrating I was listening to parents for about 24.5 minutes when my attention just slipped for a sentence, and I just tuned out. And the parents said the sentence, didn't hear what they said. They stood up, shook my hand, and walked out. And I said to my colleague, "What happened at the end?" I literally just wasn't listening to the last sentence. And she said, "Nothing happened." So they were happy that you'd listened to them for 25 minutes. And I hadn't promised anything. And that was a real eye-opener to me, that sometimes doing your best to listen, and I did pretty well, 24.5 minutes out of 25, was enough for them. And that situation was resolved. It didn't do anything. A lovely expression from Randy Pausch, don't obsess over what people think. And I think there's a lot of truth in this. I think he made up the number 33%, but he's probably not far off the mark. If we didn't worry about other people, we would be better off. And sometimes we're scared of upsetting other people, whereas as principals, we should be making the right decision for the students in our school. Also, as principals, we can always learn from situations. And to get that situation and that ethos and culture of reflecting in a school. That's what the great schools do well. They reflect on everything, whether it's feedback from parents, whether it's a meeting, how well it went or not. What can we learn from this situation? If the parents come into the office and said something, there's some glimmer of truth somewhere, and that we can make our school better because of it. When we walk around the school as principals, everyone is smiling, everyone is well behaved. And sometimes we can get a false picture of the school. And again, as with many aspects of leadership, it's anthropocentric. It's intuitive. Some people are better than others. People are some naturally better, but we can still practice wherever we are on that continuum to get that excellence, that confidence. Some people have asked about, what if there's groups of parents who seem to be running the place? Well, it's like anything. There's no short-term fix. But, some of you as principals will have turned around schools which had behaviour problems. And the way you do that is you put things in place. And it becomes a tipping point where you get the majority of students doing the right thing, being productive, and then the others kind of just come along with that. And I think that's the same with parents. You know, you've got groups of parents, you work with them, get them close, get them on projects which are productive, explain the school ethos, and then over time, these parents become less demanding. And again, the people who are benefiting from this are the students of the school, because everyone is doing a job and everyone is doing the right thing. But it can be rewarding, just like it can be more rewarding, as we know, when we've turned around students, so we've got them motivated to go to school and to learn, to study. Same can be the same for students as well as for parents. How can we help our faculty? We've talked about induction, not just at the beginning, not when someone arrives in a country, but all the way through. Induction is typically too short in schools. Training, ongoing training, endless communication of genuine school values and aims, going on about it. What are you saying? Not just once a year, but in all the communication you have. Encouraging this culture of professional sharing, reflection, teamwork. We know all about that. If everyone contributes to this, the problems are much, much less, but they have to understand the school ethos for this. Positive relationships. So many organizations, schools get it wrong. Change and more importantly, improvement can only take place if you've got positive relationships in schools, and that will help with parents as well. How can we help ourselves? Really important. You're not alone. Virtually every principal I've ever spoken to ever in the world has said that, people are getting more stressed. Some of the big name principals who I used to think, knew the answer to everything have confided in me. No, they get anxious when, certain groups of parents walk in the door. Do talk through issues with a trusted peer. You all know that already. Being a principal, being a counsellor is a lonely job. You need to have someone you can trust. There's not always a short-term fix. There's no magic wand. But become a world expert. Look at the issues. Don't shun them. Don't pretend they're not happening. Look at it for feedback. Look at what you can learn from it, and you can move forwards. Taking a break is important. I think we all now, or most of us, realise that the heroic model of leadership doesn't apply to most people. We don't, people who work 18 hours a day and expect others to do the same, and don't take the holidays. This is not effective. This is not working in the age we're in. So you need to take a break. Do you need to be reachable 24 hours a day? No. The exception that proves the rule. There's one school that is the opposite of everything I said so far. I was in a school in South London about 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to the principal, and I said to her, "Do you have any problems with parents?" And she said, no problems at all. And I thought, why is this school having any problems? And then when I was looking at what they did, their school does exactly what the parents knew it would when they signed up when their children were 11 years old. They do exactly that. The school ethos is strong. And the parents' handbook is strong. There's no areas, and everyone is working as a team, and it's really important, and it was really impressive. So we've been through a lot of things. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Some of the action points. Parents, the issue is not going to go away. So let's face it. Look at what you sell. Does it match reality? Brochures, website policies, and so on. Induction for staff. Induction for parents. Really crucial, and that doesn't mean just at the beginning. Extend that. That is ongoing all the way through the career of your faculty, and all the way through with your parents as well. Communicate relentlessly the important things. Most issues can be cut off with effective communication in the first place, and acknowledge, support, and train your staff. It's time saved by doing that effective training with staff. And also, mistakes are inevitable. No one is perfect. To have a good school, to be a good leader, you are encouraging people to do the right thing, but not punishing mistakes. If people are fearful to ask, then they're not going to grow as fast as they could do. Right, we've been through lots and lots of stuff. Thank you so much for your time, and that's me come to an end. Thank you and I hope you have a great rest of the day wherever you are in the world.
All right, this is Yolanda here with AAIE. Thank you so much, Richard, for taking the time to put this together and sharing it out with our members. We'd like to thank all of you that signed in today. We had almost 30 people that were logged in, so a very interesting topic indeed. You'll be able to find today's recording on our website on AAIE.org under webinars later this afternoon. So if you have someone else that you'd like to forward the link to see Richard's presentation, you're welcome to do that. And we'd also like to let you know that if you're interested in more leadership opportunities and trainings, we are hosting several AAIE Leadership Institutes this summer in beautiful Fort Lauderdale. We have one on creative leadership with Shabi Lutra from Consilience, and we have one on child protection leadership that is a 4-day intensive training for an individual or team from a school. And we'll also be offering one that is for marketing, admissions, advancement, and communication called the MACA Institute. Other than that, we wish you all a very smooth end to the school year, and thank you so much for logging in. We hope to see you back here again sometime soon. Take care.